Thanks for joining us today with special guest John Cusimano. He's a lawyer, mixologist, actor, producer, author, and with his band Fastest Land Animal, a lyricist, vocalist, and guitarist, alongside bandmates Andrew Meskin on drums, Johnny Blaze on guitar and bass. He is the jack and master of many trades. Welcome to the show, John. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me to talk music, life, and whatever else we come up with today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I don't know if I would add actor to my list of things that I do. I mean,
No,
I've been on TV a lot because of my wife's show, but I'm not really acting. I'm just acting like an idiot, acting like myself.
I don't know, man. You look good on TV. Like, that's what my mother tells me anyways.
Uh, Tell your mom. Uh, here she goes. I'm paying her off to say that.
When I told her, I was talking to her this weekend, and when I told her you're coming on the show, her and a few other family members like, okay, we have some questions. I'm like, no, I'm not asking any of your questions. So,
Where are they? How come you didn't invite her?
they're all over the place. They're like all over Ontario here in Canada and stuff. So, they would just take over the show completely. So it's like it's best this way.
That could be a good thing, though.
They'll start cooking and start talking to you about food and drinks and stuff. So maybe you would like it. I don't know.
It'd be fun.
So John, look at so that intro, you do a lot of different stuff. Are you, and I say, are you a career nomad by choice, or are you just one of the guys? Are you a little bit like, hey, life is long, I'm gonna live it, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can and enjoy it along the way?
It's like jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. I mean, it's just the way life worked out. I mean, I've been playing music my whole life. I ended up going to law school. Probably shouldn't have. Probably just should have stuck with the music thing, but it ended up coming in handy. Fell into the film business as an attorney for a while. Met my wife, and then ended up working with her as an attorney and as her business partner. And music was always there and always prominent in my life. And now I'm, this is my second band that I've made recordings with, and we're on our second album, and we've been touring incessantly, and just, this is our 10,000th show or something live. And then I ended up getting, just because who knows why, I ended up on Rachel's show. She got thirsty, so I was the guy making the cocktails, so I made a million cocktails on her show. And ended up being fun. And then through necessity during the pandemic, we ended up making shows from home, wherein I was the camera guy and the lighting guy and the sound guy and everything, because there was no one else around and no one else allowed in our house back during the pandemic. And then we started doing shows from home. So
what were you doing? Were you setting up the camera and then running around to the next spot and then setting up
did that. We did all of that. I would film her cooking segments. Then when I did a cocktail segment, I would put a tripod up, run in front of the camera. So I probably should have gone to film school instead of law school, but be that as it may.
So did you, at the end of those, John, did you have the credits? The cameraman, John Cusimano, lighting, John Cusimano?
I never checked the credits, but they better have given me credits, man. That was a lot of work. Getting up, I mean, when we do shows from home, we're up at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
She has to prep, we do 2 meals a day. She has to prep those 2 meals. There's no one else around. I have to set up all the lighting, the camera, the sound, mic everyone. Well, it's Rachel and me. And then we would, we do, if we're doing interviews with guests, that's a whole other camera rig that I have to set up and change the lighting around. And then the control room in New York takes over and controls it's like, looks like R2-D2. It's a camera that kind of moves itself. So, a lot of work, but it's rewarding and it's fun. Rachel and I both, we work hard, and
that's awesome.
That's what we do.
That's awesome. It's great that you had that time together and do that production. You mentioned lawyering, and sorry, is it film law or what kind of law was it?
It started out years ago. I was in the film business.
Okay.
I was buying and selling independent films. working as a distributor. I would go to the Toronto Film Festival all the time. Would go to Cannes Film Festival, Sundance, and it was fun. I loved it. It was a great job. Then I met Rachel, and she had just started out. I think she had shot a pilot or something on Food Network, and then we started dating. And then about a year or so later, she wanted to start a line of cookware, and she looked at me as the attorney and said, "Can you do that for me?" And at that point, I was very familiar with licensing deals, having sold and bought lots of films. So I said, "Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same contract as selling a film, licensing a film. Instead, I'm licensing a pot or a pan or whatever."
Yeah.
So a few weeks later, there was this huge. They have it every year in Chicago. It's called the Home and Houseware Show. They have it at McCormick Center in Chicago, and I went there with a stack of homemade Rachael Ray press kits, and ended up selling her cookware to the biggest cookware manufacturer in the country, called Meyer. They're based out of Vallejo, California. And the next year, we went back, took Rachel back to that same cookware show, houseware show, and launched her cookware, and just blossomed and grew from there.
So you're the guy behind some of the things I have in my kitchen.
You have in your kitchen, yes?
So one Christmas, you guys, she made the garbage bowl. You know the garbage bowl? We love the garbage bowl. So not only do we have a garbage bowl, we gave, like, everybody got a garbage bowl for Christmas, right? And the reaction, "Oh my God, the garbage bowl." So you're the guy that licensed helped get the garbage bowl license.
That was me.
Right on. Thanks, John.
Joy.
Hey, listen, you also said, intertwined with everything that you started talking about, music. And you said, "Well, I probably should have started to do music." Is music your true love? Like, aside from Rachel, is music, aside from relationship, is music your true love? And when did it start? Like, when did you go, "Hey, I like music"? Was it one of these situations you started playing violin when you were like 4 years old or something? Or
It was, I mean, when I was a little tiny kid, my parents used to play records for me. They would play Sergeant Pepper. And when the album ended, I would go, "More, more, more," just as a little toddler. So that was really the Beatles when I was couldn't even speak. All I could say was "more." That was my first word. That was my first me falling in love with music. And then, it just blossomed from there. I started taking piano lessons at 6 years old. And I took classical, I took jazz. And my dad taught me 3 chords on the guitar. And he said, he was a big Bob Dylan fan. He said, "Look, Bob Dylan wrote 1 million songs with 3 chords. So if you learn 3 chords, you can play, a whole bunch of songs." So I learned those 3 chords, and then I taught myself a whole lot more chords from there. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. When I was 6, really, I started playing music.
And Dad saying, "Here, play. Here's a guitar, just play."
Yeah, for sure.
G, C, and D.
Those were the chords. They're easy to play for a little kid. There's C's a little hard, but D's easy, and G, you can play it real easily.
I'm still working on those, so just
you got to crawl before you can walk, right?
I've been crawling for a long time, John. No, I'm kidding. So okay, so we got the music down, and you started at an early age, but then and you started to talk a little bit about the things that you're doing with Rachel. You've co-authored some books too, I think, and I hope I get these right. "My Year in Cocktails" and "This Must Be the Place: Dispatches and Food from the Home Front." And you have a focus both on the cocktail work that you've been doing, on your mixing, on your mixology, right?
Yeah, so I mean, those are Rachel's books. I can't take credit for that, but I did give a lot of cocktail recipes that were incorporated in the book. So "My Year in Meals," that book came out a few years ago, and the front cover is Rachel, and it says "My Year in Meals." And then if you flip the book over, on the back cover is me, and it says My Year in Cocktails. So I have like my own like book within a book, mini book at the back of her book. And it has like 100 and something
Yeah.
cocktail recipes in it. So it really was my year in cocktails. And then more recently, she had a book called This Must Be the Place. And she wanted to do more than just a recipe book. She wanted to have like essays and stories about her life and what had happened during the pandemic. Specifically, you know, we had lockdown and we were doing the show from our house right here where I'm sitting right now. Then we had our dog Isabu passed. That was in May of 2020, which is, you know, really sad for us.
Yeah.
She passed very gracefully, and it was a beautiful day. We were in the backyard, and it was very nice. And then we got our new dog, who's asleep just that way in my bed with Rachel right now, Bella. But we had a fire. Our house burnt down in the middle of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. So we had to like.
Hi, thanks for listening to the Monthly Social here on YouTube. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button. It would mean the world to us. All right, hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Take care.
But we had a fire. Our house burnt down in the middle of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. So we basically we had the clothes on our back. We didn't have time to think about what we were going to take, what we weren't going to take. We taked ourselves and our dog, of course. And we ran across the street here. We have a little guest house, and this house that I'm in now burnt to the ground. So we had nothing left, and we were working out of our guest house across the street for about a year or year and a half or so, and it took a year and a half for them to rebuild this house, and they did a great job rebuilding it, and everything's fine now. But yeah, we lost a lot of stuff. Rachel lost all these, you know, there's things that you lose that are replaceable, but then there's things that aren't replaceable. Like Rachel had all these handwritten letters from her mother, and all these recipe books, like stacks and stacks of like spiral notebooks that she had handwritten all of her recipes, and those were all gone. And I had about 15 years worth of music charts that I had handwritten. Those, you know, were all gone. And but no humans or animals were hurt or died during the fires. That was
the handwritten mom notes kind of hurt more than anything when I hear that.
You can't replace that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm sorry about the fire, and so you know, it's funny because you bring, it's not funny. You bring this up, and I was going to ask you a little bit later because I had made in one of the questions I wanted to ask you. You know, I was going to say something like, "Hey, your music's burning down the charts," and my wife, when she knows that I'm doing the interviews, once in a while she'll be like, "What are you asking?" "Well, I got this, and this," and when this one came up, she's like, "You can't say that to John." And I said,
that's all good, man. We did. In fact, Rachel is on the board of the Dennis Leary Firefighters Foundation. So she's really dialed into what firefighters do. And we've both done the training. They have this big facility in New York City. It's the biggest firefighter training facility in the country.
Wow.
It's called, it's on Randall's Island. And we've all done that. We put on 50 pounds of bunker gear. We run through controlled but actual real fire burning buildings and do rope rappelling and all the stuff that the firefighters do. So we have a real respect of what firefighters do. And one of the shows we did, we would do this thing during the pandemic where my band couldn't get together and play, but what we could do was record all of our parts separately and, you know, have little windows like we're doing right now, and glue it all together, and do these quarantunes, as we call them at the time. And we would be featured on Rachel's show quite often, and we would do different songs, and Rachel would actually join us and sing some of the songs. So I think it was Dennis Leary was maybe on the show that week or that day, and I think it was around when our house burnt down, and we did a cover of "Burning Down the House" by Talking Heads. So we have a sense of humor about that stuff. It's all good. Tell your wife it's fine.
Yeah, she was like, you can't, like, you know, their house burned down. I said, I don't know that. I said, she's like, look it, I'm telling you. So then I was like, you know. So anyway, she tries to give me good advice, I guess, you know, John, who knows, right? Look, your cocktail stuff, because we were talking about that. Did you get into that because you were around so much the cooking show, or was that always like, hey man, I like mixing stuff. It's in my heritage, it's in my blood, you know, all that sort of stuff, or
It's kind of both. Like I was into mixing cocktails for quite a long time. I have like pictures of me as a young man, uh, as a teenager, as a early 20s with a cocktail book, learning how to mix cocktails. And I grew up working in restaurants, and uh, so I've been a bartender, going way back. But then when the show came around, it just was natural for me to do it. I had a proclivity to doing cocktails and to mixing. I had a little bit of, I guess, a flair for doing it.
yeah.
And Rachel was so busy making food, and you got to keep the chef happy, right? So I started making cocktails, and then it just became something we did on the show, quite regularly.
It's a great compliment. It's so cool, and I love the way it's, you've combined those things. Listen, before we turn the, on the air sort of switch on here, you and I were talking about Italy and things like that. Did your grandfather or anybody in your family, did you ever cut up the peaches and put it in the wine growing up?
We didn't do that growing up, but I've definitely heard of that. That sounds like something
Yeah.
Rachel's grandfather would do. He was up here in the Lake George area back when she was a little girl, and he would hunt for all the food, serve rabbit that he would hunt.
Yeah.
Uh, and he would his thing he would do for dessert is he would have these hand melons, and he would cut them with a machete that he had, and then he would fill the melons with ice cream and give them to the kids, and the kids would love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting. My grandfather, who on my mom's side, he came from Calabria, and they would do like that, some of those traditions, right? So as a kid, I remember sitting on his lap, cutting the fruit up. He'd put it in, and he'd feed me. So I get these really nicely soaked peaches full of wine.
You're a
Right?
happy baby.
I was.
Yeah.
so, so look at, there's a guy I know up here in Toronto. He owns a place. It's called Chaser's Fresh Juice. He distributes these fresh juices across Canada. He works sort of internationally and stuff. Best fresh juice I've ever had. He likes to mix juices, and every time I go see him, oh, try this or try that. Um, with summer coming around the corner, if I wanted to hit him up and say, hey, give me some fresh juices, could you give us an idea? And he tells me that one of the popular mixes that comes up that restaurants are, but it doesn't have to be this, is watermelon mint. But I basically have any kind of fresh juice available to me. What could I make that's a nice cocktail before supper, John? You have any ideas you could throw our way?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a watermelon mint juice, that just lends, especially during summer, that lends itself to a great. You could do like a watermelon mint martini. It's pretty simple. I mean, basically, you're doing that juice and vodka, but you can kind of zhuzh it up a little bit. What I would do maybe is you get your cocktail shaker, take some fresh mint just to amp up the mint part of it, put like 3 or 4 leaves, and hit it with a muddler, just a few, like 8 times maybe, just to break open the capsules on the mint
Yeah.
and really flavor the cocktail. Then put in some vodka. You do like for one cocktail, I put in an ounce and a half of vodka, maybe an ounce and a half of this watermelon mint juice, and then I would add a little bit, maybe 3/4 of an ounce of orange liqueur, like triple sec or Cointreau or Curacao, something like that. And then maybe if you need a little extra sweetness, put in a half an ounce at the most of simple syrup, which is basically half sugar, half water. You melt the sugar in the water, and you can store that in the fridge. Then shake it up with ice, strain it into a chilled martini glass, and then
Nice.
garnish it with a mint leaf. And then that's going to be a really refreshing, really fun, delicious summer drink. I would do that for sure.
I'm gonna try it and send you a picture of it.
Call it the guidotini.
The Guidatini?
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I no, seriously, I wanted to try that because the guy, like I said, he's got all the juices. So I thought, hey, who
Yeah.
better to ask? Um, so John, we've been talking about a lot of things. Rachel's come up quite a bit. One site that I was on calls, says John Cusimano, best known for, says being married to Rachael Ray. And then they list all these other things that you do that we're talking about here today, including that we're gonna get to some more of your music, because that's why we're here, is talk music actually. Is it hard? And maybe this will lead in, is it hard to get recognized for your music? When you're married to such a beloved TV personality who gives, let's be honest, she gives people hope, she gives them comfort, she does it through food in the kitchen and where we spend the bulk of our lives with family and friends around something. Is it hard to get to your music, to get past all of that sometimes, um in your experiences, I guess?
Well, it's a great way to get the music out there for sure. And she's always been supportive of my music and featuring it on the show. But that was one of the reasons why we started this band during the pandemic. Fastest Land Animal was to have a project where it wasn't my last band. And the idea was, this is why we came up with these fake names, like, my fake name, Screaming Jack Novak, so that people would hear this music, we'd put it out there, and we couldn't tour, so people couldn't see us because there was
Right.
no gigs or anything. And we didn't put our faces on the album or in any of the videos early on. So I wanted to kind of get a sense of what people thought of the music just as the music, and not knowing who we were, and kind of guessing at, oh, who are these guys? Do we know them? Do we not know them? So that really was the reason behind Fastest Land Animal. And it was this great experiment, and I probably would have kept it going until now. But obviously we went on tour and started playing gigs. So we can't it's hard to hide when you're playing live in front of people. And then back when the first album, after it came out, a few weeks into it, we had the opportunity to be on a radio show called, it's the Howard Stern Wrap-Up Show.
Yeah.
We're, kind of buddies with Gary Delabate, who's Howard's executive producer, and he had me on the show, and Rachel too. And then we were, I was promoting the band and plugging the band. So at that point, the cat was out of the bag. But there was like a month or two early on when the first album came out that no one knew who we were, and it was really fun to hear reactions to the album, and people didn't know who we were, and we were being compared to bands like Queens of the Stone Age and Eagles of Death Metal, and this is all very. I'm thrilled to be compared to bands like that. Those are both great bands. So it was really fun to just have something with no preconceived notions attached to it, and that was the idea of this band.
So do you go now when you're playing live? Are you playing your alter egos, or are you playing yourselves?
We're playing the alter egos, but
Right on.
people kind of, I think they recognize me.
Does screaming Jack Novak dress differently than John Cusimano?
I don't know. Screaming Jack Novak's a punk rocker. He kind of just dresses like this. He wears a leather biker jacket, probably. Not
Right.
Not that much different than what I would normally wear, but.
So as we're talking Fastest Land Animal, I typed the name. I gotta tell you the story. I typed the name into the search engine, and a picture of a cheetah comes up.
That's the
So
fastest
then
cheetah.
that's the fastest land animal, right? So then I thought, when the new thing is this chat GBT, artificial intelligence, right? So I go over to the chat GBT AI engine and I say, is the fastest land animal John Cusimano? And the AI robot replies to me and says, no, John Cusimano is not the fastest land animal. John Cusimano is a human being, not an animal. The fastest land animal, as I mentioned earlier, is the cheetah. So the AI engine says you're not an animal, John.
Right? I mean, I'm a human. Like, humans are animals technically, but yeah, I guess that's sort of accurate. I'm definitely
what's the meaning behind fastest land animal? What gave this life?
Well, it was a name I had. My last band was called the Cringe, and that was a name I had sort of been carrying around with me for a while, and I never really liked that name, but kind of started out as a joke years ago, and then I stuck with it. But I had thought of this name, Fastest Land Animal, years back, and I never used it because I had the cringe. And I always thought, "Man, this is a really cool name. Someone's gonna think of it. Someone's gonna use it." And then back in 2020, when I decided, hey, I'm gonna do a new project, I think I'm gonna call it Fastest Land Animal, and I Googled it, and I came up with a cheetah, like you. Like no one had come up with this idea of naming a band Fastest Land Animal. So I'm like, cool, I'm gonna use that name. And then that kind of led. The idea was to have this band. Every song needed to be fast, like Fastest Land Animal, like a cheetah.
Right.
So the rule was with the first album and most of the second album as well that just came out, East Coast, West Coast, in between, no songs slower than 150 beats per minute. So we're talking pretty fast songs, and short songs, punk rock, melodic punk rock. And then on the new album, kind of crossed over a little bit to new wave. So that was the basic mindset to start this band. And once I had those rules in place, then I was able to write songs that fit into that model, if you can. And that's how the band started, and that's why we're called Fastest Land Animal.
That's cool. So the name's actually tied to the type of music or the speed and the style of the music that you actually want to play. So that's kind of cool that's happening. Now, John, if you were an animal, what's your favorite animal? What would you be? Would you be the cheetah?
Maybe a dolphin.
A dolphin.
I love the ocean. I love swimming, and dolphins, they seem really smart, and they have family units, and they're just cute. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always loved dolphins. So maybe I want to be a dolphin.
All right. I wonder if are they the fastest in the sea? I'm gonna have to look it up now. I'll have to ask the AI.
I'm sure about that. I know barracudas are pretty fast.
Yeah, maybe they're not.
I don't know about dolphins.
But they're cute and friendly, John. So we'll go with that. You mentioned the Cringe. You have a different lineup in Fastest Land Animal than you did in the Cringe.
Yeah, there's some crossover, but it's slightly different band members.
Why? So I get you gave us the philosophy behind the name, but were you at all concerned? Like the Cringe did have some brand recognition already, right?
Yeah, I mean, but the whole point was to leave all that behind and do something completely new that people weren't familiar with. And I'm glad we did it. It's really fun. It's liberating in a way, especially because in the Cringe, I played rhythm guitar and sang at the same time. And in this band, I'm leaving I'm not playing any guitar at all. I write the songs on guitar, but then once I write the songs, I put the guitar down. I'm just the lead singer. That's it. So it's kind of liberating. It frees me up to be able to interact with the crowd a little more, be more of a showman, not be glued to that mic stand, and not have to, deal with tuning a guitar and, the amp and the mix in my ear. It's just a lot easier to deal with, and I'm really enjoying the freedom that gives me. So I forget what the question was, but
the transition. No, it was a transition from the Cringe to the Fastest Land Animal. But as you're kind of talking about that and the freedom, and I'm thinking you're a trio, right? In Fastest Land Animal, the trio works.
It does. On the record, we're a trio. When we tour live, Johnny Blaze, who his name is Alphonse Castillo on the record. Yeah. He plays all the guitars and bass on the record. He can't do all of that at the same time when we play live. We need extra help. So when we tour, we do tour with, he plays bass, and we have two extra guitar players, Danny Rosselli, who plays guitars and keyboards and sings backing vocals. He's like our utility guy, and Tommy Hayes plays guitar as well. So there's 5 of us when we tour. Okay. And that because we got 2 guitars going, and the bass and the drums, there's no need for me to play guitar.
Yeah, and you're not getting into overdubbing or anything like that. I guess when you're playing live, right? It's a nice live sound with everybody. Now you did some recording during the pandemic. It sounds like you did some songs, and you talked a little bit about some of the challenges or whatever. What was it? You just recorded your tracks, sent them all in, did the Zoom thing, and how did that all work out?
What happened was, like, back at the early stages of Fastest Land Animal, I had a bunch of songs that I just write demos right here in this room that we're hanging out in on guitar, record them, and then over the course of time, I have enough songs that okay, great, I got an album here. So I had all these fast songs that were punky and like they needed work, but they were the bones were there for an album. So I was stuck at home during the pandemic. This was like March 2020,
Yeah.
spring of 2020. Couldn't go anywhere. My band we were all over the country. My Johnny, our bass player guitarist, is in Arizona, still is, and our drummer is in Houston, Texas, and our producer Don Gilmore is in L.A. or Seattle, depending upon where he was working. So we were separated, but we all had the benefit of having home studios in our homes. So we knew we could record parts separately and glue it together in the end. So that's what we did for that first record. And it actually was a really efficient way of working. We were able to nothing beats getting together and going to a studio and recording together as a band. But we're so familiar with, we've been playing together for so long that we knew it was almost like we were together because we just knew what we were gonna do, even though we weren't doing it together. So we did the first album remotely, and it ended up like sounding great and being an easy way to work. So we ended up doing the second album that way also, even though at that point the pandemic had ended and we could have gotten together, but we're home anyway. You could work all day and then I could walk downstairs and have dinner with my wife and not have to worry about travel or any of that stuff. So that's what we did for the second album as well.
That's phenomenal. Like I would, if I didn't know that, I wouldn't know that it was recorded like, in all these different places and so well put together. Like it's so tight for remote, building it remotely like that, John.
Yeah, we're really we just worked for so long and we work so well together that we kind of musically finish each other's sentences, so it's easy for us to work like that and make it sound like we're together because mentally we're together even though physically we're far apart.
So John, what's the path or the journey from the first album to when you, or from the album to for you to get to East Coast, West Coast, and in between? What's the idea there, naming that album that name?
Well, the name came from just because I'm here in New York, I'm the East Coast. Johnny's on the West Coast in Arizona, and Don, he's on the West Coast, and then in between is where Andrew Meskin, we also call him Shark Samuels. He's in Houston, Texas, which is in between. So it's pretty literal
geography.
Yeah, it's geography. But I guess the evolution from sort of we evolved a little bit from the first to the second album. The first album is really our New York album. It's sounds, even though it wasn't recorded in New York City, I just brought all that New York City energy to me. It was a New York City punk rock record. And then this second album is a little more has that like Western cowboy kind of thing happening. It still has that East Coast punk rock thing going on, but musically it expanded a little more. There's a little more synth work in it. So it goes a little bit more into the new wave, the early 80s new wave, late 70s, early 80s new wave thing musically. And then lyrically, there's just a lot of cowboy, dusty, middle of the country, West Texas, high desert imagery in there lyrically. There was a little bit more of what was going on.
So I struggle with this because I always say, when we talk with artists and we say, oh, you sound like, John, you sound like da 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 da, right? But so I'm listening to your body of work, right, between the albums, and I'm hearing all sorts of things. I'm hearing some Rush, some Pink Floyd, some Ramones, some Pistols, some Misfits, some Johnny Thunders. So much John. I for whatever reason, Johnny Thunder stuck in my head. I had to go and look up some Johnny Thunder stuff after I was listening to it. But and you got these melodies I'm a big Guns N' Roses guy, right? And there's some melodies. They stretch out their melodies sometimes. And some of your songs have these beautifully stretched out melodies but they work in that fast pace too, right?
Thanks.
And you're going, Guido, you're all over the place. Right?
And
What
those
are
are
what are
all
you
like,
painting me here?
and those are also my favorite bands you've mentioned. I mean, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction's like a perfect rock record if ever there was one.
Yeah,
And
it is a good album.
you're in Toronto, so you have to mention Rush, of course. And Pink Floyd, I grew up listening. It's just in my DNA, and of course, the Ramones and the Misfits and the Pistols and Johnny Thunder. I mean, these are all seminal artists that influenced certainly me just listening to them, but also specifically Fastest Land Animal because we are rooted in punk rock, and those are seminal artists in the history of punk rock. So I mean, I'm in good
So I'm
company.
not crazy. I'm not crazy. Like when I hear that stuff, I'm not crazy hearing that stuff. Like the
No,
like okay.
not at all. I mean that we all grow up listening to a wide array of music, and it just bleeds into what you do, whether you want it to or not, or whether you're I wasn't trying to make a Dark Side of the Moon prog rock record, but
Right.
those influences are just there. I can't help it, and they seep through, I guess, which is a good thing.
Now you know what, John, and I say that, but at the same time, you have an FLA sound. Like you've got your Fastest Land Animal sound, and at the same time, I'm going, they've got enough of a sound that at some point I'm probably going to compare some other band and say, hey, they sound like Fastest Land Animal, right?
I mean,
Like
that's the best compliment. Thank you. Yeah.
so I guess, it is the influences that you have, and it kind of seeped into your lyrics and your music and whatnot. I mentioned earlier, my wife says, hey, these questions about, asking John or not asking John certain things. And she says to me, do you know that he plays 9 instruments? And I said, no, I didn't. So then I thought, I think it means I'm supposed to ask you if you play 9 instruments, because she didn't say to me, ask him, but it was that tone where it was like, did you know that he played 9 instruments? Do you
My
really play
wife,
9 instruments?
my wife likes to say I play 700 instruments, whatever it is. But okay, so I play keyboards. So if you ask Rachel, I play piano. That's one instrument. Organ. That's another instrument. Synthesizer. I have 7 different types of synthesizers. So now we're up to like 9 instruments, and then uh, electric piano and okay. So it's all keyboard. So I play keyboards, and I'm a pretty decent keyboard player. I play guitar, so that's 2, but it's not. I play guitar. I play acoustic guitar. I play electric guitar. I play 12-string guitar. It's all
Right.
guitar. So
Okay.
this is where things get a little like not so accurate. I do play banjo. I've gotten like it's
That's
pretty
awesome.
to play. I'm playing finger picking Scruggs style banjo, which is really a blast. In fact, I have a side project with friends of mine in New York City. It's called the Hoot Nanny, and we get together and we play bluegrass versions of rock and pop songs. Um, and then I can play drums too and bass. So I got
Yes,
like the
you do. Yeah,
basic rock band stuff covered.
so you do. You play a lot of different instruments. Now, I know you said, hey, I really enjoy singing with the band. Out of all of that stuff, if you had to play an instrument, what's your go-to? What's your favorite?
I mean, the one I'm best at is piano and keyboards. I
Piano.
just I love piano. I love playing classical music. I love playing jazz. I love playing rock. Um, the one I write on the most is probably guitar. It just lends itself to writing the type of music I'm writing.
Yeah. Do you name your instruments or your guitar or anything? Or
No, not necessarily. I do
no?
like I have. I can show you that I had this one. This is a gift from my wife. This
Oh,
is
nice.
basically it's the Kurt Cobain guitar. It's
That's beautiful.
yeah, it's a 1960s Fender Mustang. And I have a pretty decent bunch of guitars that I like playing, and you really get inspired when you play a certain guitar, just the sound of it, and just holding it makes you like feel like you're harnessing something, that's beyond imagination, and it's really fun to have guitars that you love, that you adore, that you just like playing.
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to a few people when we talk about guitars, and just a relationship that you have with that instrument, right? And when you take it with you, I was talking on one show and we were saying, and I'm looking over here because my guitar's sitting over there, and it's got the little nicks and scratches,
Sure.
and you sometimes you remember where that happened or what it's from, or
The
you know
character.
character, right? But it is, when you talk to somebody who plays guitar, it's always they have this relationship with the instrument, like it's something, it's part of them, and you care about it. That's why I said, do you have a name for it? Because sometimes people name their guitars or whatever. So how about music videos and streams? Fastest Land Animal is racking up a lot of views in terms of some of your video content. Are you, and Andrew and Johnny, are you where you thought you wanted to be in terms of that response with Fastest Land Animal?
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm so out of my element when it comes to this stuff, but Andrew's really good at that. And during the pandemic, when that first album came out, we were making, and first of all, we couldn't get together and do videos. Second of all, we wanted to be incognito, so we didn't want to show ourselves. So he came up with this bright idea. You should check out the video if you haven't already. It's the first single off our first record, called "Too Close to the Fire," and it's sock puppets. The video is all just sock puppets being us and playing in a sock puppet rock band. So that's kind of where we started things, and then we did a video with TVs on our heads so you couldn't see our faces, and so it is a lot of fun to try and come up with something, not so serious, kind of clever, um, but it has a rock and roll spirit to it.
Um, if I'm a new listener to Fastest Land Animal,
Yeah.
what's in the catalog of songs? Which song do you tell me to listen to?
Well, I guess you could do worse than start with the sock puppet video, "Too Close to the Fire."
Yeah.
On our new album, we are the first single off that album is "Out of Range." That's a good place to start too. And then that Police cover, "Next to You," is a
Yeah.
pretty fun thing to listen to.
I'm just writing these down because I want to add them to the notes after for suggestions and stuff.
Cool, thanks.
Um, what's next? Like, what do you got going on for Fastest Land Animal in terms of shows or some touring, more music videos?
Yeah.
What do we have to look forward to?
Well, tomorrow, actually, day after tomorrow, we're going to Omaha. We got a gig there with our good friends in the band Tesla. We've been touring with them
Oh, cool.
incessantly for many years now. We love those guys. Still working on the new album, and then the summer's here already, so we'll be cobbling together a tour. We're in the process of it. A lot of gigs coming up this summer and the beginning of 2024. So we'll be hopefully coming to a gig near you soon.
You gonna cross the border? You gonna come see us
Yeah,
here?
man, we love, we played as the Cringe. We toured all over Canada and all over North America with Motley Crue and Alice Cooper.
Uh-huh.
So we've played Quebec City, Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver, all great cities. So we've seen quite a bit of that big country north of the 49th parallel.
I'm hoping you're coming back, and so are others, John.
I hope so. Have some poutine, man.
Well, yeah, I guess. Or come for some pasta puttanesca. How about that?
Hey, it sounds good.
um, where can folks best connect with you and the other band members online? Like what's your favorite social media channel if you have one?
If people,
Where's the best place to become a Fastest Land Animal fan and get merch and listen to the music and all that stuff?
I would say go to fastestlandanimal.band. And from there, that's the hub, and it'll take you everywhere you need to go. Fastestlandanimal.band.
Okay. And all your links are off of that hub for folks then.
Everything.
Right on. John, I've bombarded you with questions. And I know you got busy stuff going on there. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before I let you go?
I just want to say thank you for this time, Guido. It was a pleasure hanging out with you, and we will see you out on the road as soon as possible.
That is John Cusimano, lawyer, mixologist, actor, producer, author, and with his band Fastest Land Animal, a lyricist, vocalist, and guitarist alongside bandmates Andrew Meskin on drums, Johnny Blaze on guitar and bass. I'll have his social media contact information in the show notes. And stay tuned because we're going to hear some Fastest Land Animals music right here on the show. Thank you, John. Take care and hope that you'll be back in the future.
Peace out, my brother.